Somewhere on a beach, Alice is struggling to break free as the demon lord has captured her. The demon lord introduces himself as Merlin Lucifer, and is rather chivalrous than one would expect. He extends his hand and is about to declare something when Alice's mind starts running amok. She feels this is it for her, but she doesn't want her training with the Snow Mountain Sword Saint to go to waste. After all, she was the 233rd hero to complete her training. She gets ready to use all her strength against the Dark Lord and uses a spell to convert her sword into a frost blade. She charges at the Dark Lord with all her might, but he stops the attack with his index finger. He smirks and slightly touches Alice's chin, declaring that her body belongs to him from that day onwards. Lucifer, the demon lord, is back at his castle. He is dozed off while sitting on his throne when Lilith comes to meet him. But seeing his charming, peaceful face, she couldn't resist the urge to kiss him. As she leans in closer, she gets distracted by the army from the church announcing war against them. They are there to eradicate the demon king. Lilith gets furious as her moment is ruined, but then she chooses to ignore them and finish what she started. Just then, Lucifer stops her from getting any closer. The army wouldn't stop calling upon him, which irks Lilith as it is interrupting her time with Lucifer. She soon loses her temper and takes out her whip. But Lucifer stops her, saying they've come looking for trouble on the last day of his reign, and he will personally send them to the afterlife. He heads out, Lilith follows, and soon a fight ensues between the church and the demons. Lucifer looks at the battle from a distance, and suddenly Alice catches his attention. She is that generation's hero, but Lucifer thinks she seems weak. Meanwhile, Alice is busy fighting the beasts. Her army is counting on her as their hero, and when a blood-sucking monster appears behind the two soldiers, Alice finishes the monster in one strike. Contrary to her fierce look while fighting, she gives the soldiers a heartwarming smile and asks them not to lose focus. The soldiers cry tears of joy and praise her as she proclaims she will defeat the demon king Lucifer. From a distance, the bishop is annoyed at the peasants in the vanguard squad. The priest tries to calm the bishop and says those peasants are worthless and are there to do most of the fighting. Once the situation is in their favor, regardless of any survivors and vanguards, the church army will proceed to claim victory. They don't have confidence in the hero, but the bishop isn't worried, as he has a secret weapon in the skies. When monsters surround vanguards, the bishop unleashes the giant whale, a weapon the church has been preparing for 100 years. Alice is shocked to witness the bishop's obliviousness toward his men. If the whale's laser beam hits them, the vanguard will also be eliminated along with the monsters, but the bishop couldn't care less. Lucifer calls the whale ugly before striking it and warding off the laser, consequently saving everyone. The vanguards are surprised that they are still alive. The bishop is dumbfounded and can't believe an attack could be more powerful than the Holy Arcanary. But he still believes Lucifer is no match for the white whale, whose body is made using all kinds of precious metal and God's blood. He orders the whale to crush Lucifer with its body. Lucifer is confident and takes only a second to slice the entire whale in half with his sword finally unsheathed. Everybody is awestruck by the display of such power. Lucifer then turns to the bishop and the priest as they are next to face his wrath. The bishop calls out to the hero and asks her to do something. Alice wouldn't let that happen, so she challenges the demon lord to a duel, but Lucifer ignores her. Once again, unsheathing his sword, he annihilates the entire church army and the vanguards, leaving Alice unscathed. Merlin Lucifer was born with tremendous power, which later resulted in him becoming the third owner of the first demon palace. However, he was also born with cardiac atrophy, which shortened his lifespan. But the demon sword he possessed, called the Aeternum, acted as a boon for him. Every time he slayed a powerful enemy, the sword augmented his life force, helping him temporarily alleviate the effects of his curse. That is why he is searching for the strongest person in the world, because he believes that the curse will be lifted once he defeats the strongest person. And so his last day of reign has come. Lucifer turns to Lilith and asks her to take care of herself once he's gone. Lilith cries bitterly and pleads with him not to leave her. Ever since she was born, Lucifer has been by her side, and now suddenly he'll be gone. It is too much for her to take, so Lucifer tries placating her. He can't stay longer because if he does, his heart will give in sooner or later. But Lilith is not ready to hear anything. She even offers herself as a sacrifice to extend Lucifer's life. Stunned by Lilith's selflessness, Lucifer flicks her forehead for her naivety, and then places his hand on her head. He says he'll have to leave to lift the curse, but once he does, he'll return to her and never leave her. Lilith finally agrees to let him go, but on one condition. She asks him to be careful of brazen hussies and avoid getting bewitched by them, or else she will eliminate them in the most horrific ways that only a jealous girlfriend can imagine. Lucifer would be lying if he said hearing that didn't send a chill down his spine. He soon starts to leave, but seeing Alice sleeping after getting knocked out, he decides to take her with him. As he starts lifting her, Lilith snarls with jealousy, but Lucifer quickly clears the misunderstanding. He says she will be his gopher to help him adjust to the outside world, since he doesn't know much about it. Lucifer also thinks her stamina and willpower make her a useful tool to keep around. He soon leaves and Lilith blushes, thinking about the words he had said to her about not leaving her side once he's back. Lilith can't wait to meet him again. She decides to complete her bridal training till the time he returns. Alice is slowly gaining consciousness as she thinks of how things played out. She was easily flattered by the church and believed that she could defeat the Demon King, but it was only her wishful thinking. He is too strong for her and remembers what her master had said about her lacking in her cultivation. She believes her master was right. Lucifer soon reaches the shore, and when he sees the destroyed boat, he makes Alice lie under the shade of a tree while he was out to search for another way to get past the water. Alice lies under the tree when she feels liquid dripping on her face. She opens her eyes to find a ferocious beast inches away from her. She suddenly backs away, making the demon wolf come at her. But before he can attack her, Lucifer comes and stops the demon wolf with his bare hands. He then gently strokes the demon wolf and instructs it not to harm his possession. The demon wolf soon acts like a faithful wolf and enjoys the scratches from Lucifer. Meanwhile, Alice has a hard time keeping her heartbeat stable after being rescued by the same guy again. She can't help but notice the cheerful smile on Lucifer's face and find herself getting attracted to him, but she soon shakes off this feeling and reminds herself that he is the Demon King. He must have had an ulterior motive behind saving her. After the demon wolf leaves wagging its tail, Lucifer turns to Alice. She sees his smirk and thinks Lucifer has fallen for her cute looks and now wants to defile her. Before Lucifer can say anything else, Alice attacks him with her sword, but stopping it is child's play for Lucifer, and once he has her full attention, he declares that her body now belongs to him. Alice resists and claims she'll never bow to the demon lord, but Lucifer makes it clear that he is her kidnapper, and now that she is his captive, he will make her do some very unreasonable and inhumane things. Alice is certain she will be subjected to debauchery and might be used to raise demon offspring. She cries inside at her plight because she hasn't even had her first date, and she is on the verge of becoming the Demon King's concubine and breeding so. She struggles as Lucifer lifts her and tosses her on a boat. Alice calls him a pervert and warns him not to come near her, or she'll jump into the sea. They are in the middle of the sea when Alice draws her sword and threatens to eliminate herself if Lucifer comes near her. Lucifer finds the oar right underneath her, so he stomps on the end of the oar that, in turn, makes the flat side of the oar hit Alice on the head as it comes up. Alice loses grip on her sword, which falls into the corner of the boat, while she holds her head in pain, making Lucifer question her intelligence. Alice gives up defending herself and asks Lucifer to get it over with, but Lucifer rejects her, saying he has been with women, and she is not his type. Alice's ego is bruised when Lucifer calls her flat-chested. He makes fun of Alice for using mithril armor as chest pads. Once he's done laughing his guts out, he reveals his purpose of taking her along. He tells her they're sailing across the Strait of Orkney, and once they cross the sea, they'll enter the territory of Great Britain. Alice suddenly turns serious and warns him against it. She gives the reference of the church warships. When setting sail from the port of Bristol, it takes hundreds of rowers assisted with wind magic a whole day to sail across the Strait of Orkney. Also, the ships are painted with dragon faces to keep the enemies at bay, because countless sea creatures lurking in the strait give even the saint-ranked individuals a hard time. That is why it would be impossible for them to take turns rowing across the strait. Lucifer corrects Alice and says only she will be rowing while he stands on the edge of the boat enjoying the cool breeze, leaving Alice with a dumbfounded look. It has been 3 days, and Alice is amazed that no sea monster has attacked them yet. Lucifer points out the big monster has been following them, and because of this, all the little ones are keeping their distance. Alice is curious to know if the rumor she heard of Demon Lord defeating a sea demon with his bare hands is true. Lucifer says it is true, but the beast following them is much bigger than the sea demon. Just then, they both are catapulted from their boat, but lucky for them, they land on their boat. The massive size Plesiath appears. Alice speculates it is the overlord of Orkney and doubts Lucifer will be able to face it. She whimpers and asks what they will do now, but Lucifer stands motionless, with his back to her. She thinks they are done for, but Lucifer turns around and calls the Plesioth ugly because of its thick neck and a disproportionately small head. He soon starts laughing hysterically. The Plesioth's nerve pops upon hearing such indignation. It uses its tail to strike against the surface of the water, and its sheer size creates huge waves, sending their boat flying several feet in the air, enough to give anybody seasickness. Lucifer takes a fighting stance, ready to face the demon overlord. Lucifer unsheathes his sword and, in a split second, swings the sword 4 to 5 times before keeping it back in its scabbard. Pleased with himself, he gently pulls Alice's cheek and asks her to get going. It appears as if nothing happened, but just then, the demon overlord splits into many pieces, scattering around their boat. He warns that the blood will lure the man-eating sharks, so she should start paddling. As Alice starts paddling, she thinks of how powerful Lucifer is, not only on land but on the ocean too. She fears dire consequences if he enters a country of humans. She musters up the courage and asks Lucifer why he left the demon palace. Lucifer replies he is no longer the demon king, but then changes his answer and says he was invincible within the demon tribe. So he got bored and left demon palace, just so that he could create havoc outside. He decides not to disclose the fact that the demon council fired him. She believes that he is already at the saint rank and wonders how much he would have pushed himself to achieve this level of strength. Lucifer laughs at Alice for believing he had to push himself hard to become strong. He calls Alice average and untalented, and says average people like her should spend their hard work on things within their means. He then shows her his sword and says in the entire demon tribe, only he can unsheath it, which is why he inherited the first demon palace. He has a natural gift, an ability that cannot be surpassed through mere hard work. He explains that his mother was Lucifer too, who lost her life in a battle. He and his sister were left alone to fend for themselves, and living in the demon tribe meant the law of the jungle. To protect his sister, he swore he would become stronger than anyone. He then painstakingly trained his sword arts every single day until he slayed the demon who had been oppressing his sister and him, and became the new demon king. Alice points out that he did work hard, irking Lucifer, who stays firm in his belief that he was born strong. Alice gets irritated and argues that he had a pitiful past, so why would he assert being strong? Lucifer elaborates that he already had the power, but didn't know how much to use, so he figured out how to control it and became strong instantly. Everything Lucifer says is now going over Alice's head. Seeing her confused, Lucifer thinks she is better off concentrating on rowing, while he lies down to relax and wonders why his heart feels calm in Alice's presence. Their boat finally touches land and Lucifer gets down to see if it is the land of Great Britain. But seeing no village around, he gets annoyed at exhausted Alice, who drags herself out of the boat and falls on the ground with a thump. She is already plotting her revenge on the scumbag of a demon king who made her row through the entire journey. Just then, Lucifer walks towards her and mocks her for throwing tantrums. He then pulls her cheeks like a baby's and makes funny faces. She manages to free herself and shouts that they are in Great Britain, but somewhere around the northern shoreline. Satisfied that he has reached the human world, Lucifer bids goodbye to Alice and says he'll see her around, much to Alice's chagrin, who can think of nothing but slicing off his head one day. Lucifer soon stops as he remembers he doesn't have any money on him. He suddenly turns back to look at Alice and her mithril armor. It is generally passed down from generations of heroes and is made from good quality material. If only he could get his hands on the armor, he could sell it for a lot of money. He walks back to Alice, says he can't say goodbye without taking something, and asks her to strip. Alice is dumbfounded at his absurd request and tries to talk him out of it, but she knows how strong he is, so she gives up and strips. As soon as she removes the armor, he takes it and says he only wants the armor. As far as she is concerned, he asks her to grow a little more and come back next year, and probably then he'll be interested in her. He then bids her goodbye and walks away. Alice stays there for a long time before she wails in anger and embarrassment. Lucifer walks whistling and hoping to meet more interesting people as he starts his new life in the human world. It has been 1 whole year since Lucifer set foot in Great Britain. While somewhere in the woods, 2 thugs are waiting for their next target. The villagers nowadays are more vigilant and avoid taking such routes. Just then, they spot a man in a tattered condition walking towards them. One of the thieves laughs when he sees who is coming toward them. He lets go of the poster and smirks, telling his partner how looks can be deceiving. The poster flies with the wind and sticks to Lucifer's face. He removes it from his face and stares at his picture on the poster with the line "Gigolo from Scotland" written on it. And there is a 5,000 gold coins reward on him for dining and dashing on multiple occasions. Suddenly, the two thugs appear in front of him and threaten him, but Lucifer ignores them completely and walks past them. Hurt, they call out to him again and claim that he has a bounty of 5,000 gold coins on him, so they won't let him go that easily. Lucifer finally turns towards them and warns them to mind their business, or else he'll have to draw his swords, which would cost them their lives. But the bandits don't back down, and to scare Lucifer, one of them uses his dagger skills on an apple, but Lucifer is distracted by the apple as he hasn't eaten in days. Taking it as an insult, the bandit attacks Lucifer, but Lucifer doesn't even have to unsheathe the entire sword, and he manages to behead the bandit. The other thief doesn't realize how it happened and runs for his life. The slain bandit suddenly turns into his true form, and it is revealed he was a goblin disguised as a human bandit. Lucifer doesn't think much about it and continues his journey. Meanwhile, the other goblin arrives at a cave and wishes to see the Majesty. He runs inside and reports that his partner was decapitated by a human who didn't even draw his sword. He just saw a flash, and his partner was gone. The Goblin King thinks that it is a way of humans looking to start a war, especially after the humans have enlisted the help of high-grade experts. Lucifer arrives at another village, where the market is bustling with customers. Lucifer has no money left and realizes how difficult it is to make a living. In the past year, he had made a fortune after selling Alice's mithril armor. He lived in a private manor and indulged in luxury. He spent most of his money on horse race betting, and by the time he realized he had spent all his money, and even racked up a huge debt in the process. Because he was so used to a luxurious life, he continued visiting high-end restaurants despite being broke. And that is how he became the Dine and Dasher and stripped Scotland of its wealth. He was soon declared a fugitive. Lucifer couldn't live there any longer and ran from his creditors. Suddenly, Lucifer starts busking and entertaining people around with his cloning techniques. Soon a crowd gathers around him and enjoys his performance, but everybody leaves swiftly when he asks for tips. They head to hear the church's preaching. A little boy named Henry is lost in his own little world and is enjoying a lollipop when Lucifer stops him. He asks for some money, but when the boy, now almost in tears, tells him he doesn't have any, Lucifer scares him by saying that he might lose his life for his indolence. But he looks rich, so he is ready to become his teacher and teach him the most invincible sword art for 2 copper coins. Henry is immediately interested, but then loses interest as soon as Lucifer mentions he is going to teach him quick drawing, as it is a very basic move. Thoroughly unimpressed, Henry gives Lucifer some candies because he tried hard in his performance. He leaves after saying that Lucifer is a grown man and he needs to find a proper job. Lucifer gets furious but accepts he needs to find a proper job. He hears the priest talking about the ordeals of the Demon Lord and how he slays an entire church army with one slash. He finds some women in the crowd talking about Demon Lord and regurgitating every rumor they've heard, like the Demon King being ugly to the 233rd hero being ravaged by the Demon Lord. The priest continues by saying that Lucifer III is cruel and can massacre them at any time. Lucifer hears this but doesn't have any plans to attack Great Britain. He dismisses it as demon threat stories. Once the priest is done talking, he shows everybody a Bible and says the Bible would help them strengthen their faith and presents a whole collection of such Bibles. This was all propaganda to sell each Bible for 10 gold coins. Lucifer is baffled at how hypocritical the church is in scamming people of their hard-earned money. But what pisses him off the most is he didn't get a share even after they used his name. In order to survive, Lucifer's job hunting continues. At the moment, he is sitting in front of a pub owner, trying to smite her with his good looks and charm. It works, and she hires him. He tells her that he is a traveler, and he takes any job for only 2 months, after which he continues his journey. The real reason behind it is that the curse hasn't been lifted yet, so his search for strong beings continues. The owner offers to pay him 1 gold coin a month with accommodation and food included, and for every cup of alcohol he sells, he will get a 20% commission. In the evening, her pub is only open to females, and his job will be to sell them drinks. She insinuates he uses his charms, and if needed, develop intimate relations with them to help their business. Lucifer realizes he has fallen so far in the human world that he has no choice but to sell drinks using his body. He is somber about it. But when the owner adds that if his sales are outstanding, she will pay him extra when he resigns. That is enough to cheer Lucifer up, and he takes up the job of coaxing the women into drinking. He soon starts his career as a ladies' boy. Somewhere Alice is traveling with her belongings. A year ago, Alice was robbed of the mithril armor, due to which she incurred a huge debt. To pay back the debt, she registered as an adventurer. Due to her identity as a former hero, she was immediately promoted to the gold rank. She undertook many missions and got paid for them. And so she stumbled upon the torn poster of the gigolo from Scotland, and immediately took the mission seeing the hefty bounty on him. Because the poster was torn from where Lucifer's face was, she didn't know she was going after her nightmare from the past. Meanwhile, in the Moonlight Pub, Lucifer is already popular among women. He's busy attending to them when he sees Henry call the owner Mom. Henry notices Lucifer, and they exclaim their versions of each other, mostly insults. The owner quickly tries to handle the situation and apologizes to Lucifer on behalf of her son. But Henry is unapologetic and blames all the men in the past who have bad-mouthed his mom, and now the kids also bad-mouths his mom. He probably fought with other kids because they were saying ill about his mom. Lucifer finally speaks to Henry and says if he wants to protect his mom, he should concentrate on becoming stronger and not shooing him away. Also, being stronger will make those hateful fellows think twice before they provoke him. But to Lucifer's annoyance, Henry refuses to learn the quick drawing technique, which he calls useless, before running away from there. Lucifer hears some customers talk about goblins in the village. The other adventurer agrees with the first and says the goblins live in the mountains behind the village. The woman sitting with them tells them about the goblin corpse that was found on the road outside the village. They order another round of drinks and Lucifer gives a virtuoso display of his drinks-making skill. The two adventurers resume talking about splitting the rewards, but one of them proposes to give a larger share to the other adventurer, revealing he and the woman, a mage, are getting married after the mission and will head home for the ceremonies. Lucifer thinks they might be in danger and tries to extract information from them. One of them tells Lucifer that the mission is to eliminate 100 goblins and then cut off their left ears. The other adventurer adds that the mission doesn't pose a threat to them as they are silver rank adventurers. Not thinking much of it, Lucifer lets them be. The adventurers soon start off on their adventure and have already eliminated many goblins. With 37 more to go, they cannot let their guard down, but just then, a giant goblin appears out of nowhere and lands on one of them, ending his life immediately. Now, with just the adventurer and his fiancée left, the giant goblin intimidates them. On the giant goblin's shoulder sits the Prime Minister of Goblins, Geju. The adventurer is shocked to know such a high-ranked goblin has arrived, which means their life is in danger. The mage cries in fear. Geju mocks them and says their king will give the lady a special treatment, but they don't need the adventurer. He then creates a fireball and hurls it at the surviving adventurer. The fireball grows tenfolds as it approaches the adventurer. The adventurer doesn't lose hope and asks the mage to back him up with magic. The mage activates the second stage wind spirit spell, and with the increased energy, the adventurer is able to dissipate the fireball. Unbeknownst to him, the giant goblin is right behind the fireball. As soon as it dissipates, the goblin hits the adventurer with its cudgel, hurling him several feet away. Geju orders the goblins to tie the mage up. Seriously injured adventurer snarls at them to leave her alone. Geju gives a wicked smile and says he'll have to make a small deal with him in order to save the mage. Alice has just reached a new town, and she stands outside the Moonlight Pub. She has heard it is the best in town, so she decides to check it out. It is lively in there as the workers are busy setting up the stage for Lucifer, who refuses to come out until everything is ready. The owner welcomes Alice, and judging from her appearance, she can tell Alice is not from the town. Alice tells her she is an adventurer looking for a room for the night. The owner shows her the room and invites her to the special dance performance that night by their top boy. Alice thinks it must be something improper, so she politely declines, saying she is there only for lodging. She then takes out the torn wanted poster and asks if she recognizes the man, but with the face torn off, the owner cannot say anything for sure. After thanking her, Alice turns to her room to rest. As she goes inside and shuts the door, Lucifer comes out from the adjoining room and thinks he heard Alice's voice, but soon brushes it off as his imagination and heads downstairs. Alice plops on her bed and praises Lord for a comfortable bed after many days of camping. Her thoughts drift to when she was captured by the pirates from Port Elgin, while saving the Duke's daughter and her friends who were abducted by the pirates. Just then, Lucifer appears wearing a cape and standing on the frame of the skysail. He challenges the Redbird brothers, leaders of the pirates. They are saint-rank experts and travel with a fleet of 17 warships. Alice and the other girls are trapped in a cage because of which she can't see who the man is. Against everybody's expectation, Lucifer has not come to save the girls, but he is on the run from his creditors. Now that he has crossed paths with two saint-level experts, he is not going to let this chance go in order to lift his curse. He eliminates the Redbird brothers and the entire army in just one strike. Though Alice didn't get a glimpse of the man, she was smitten by his strength and vigor. She blushes while rolling on the bed, thinking about the hero of her dreams. She is reminded that she needs to write a letter to her master. She starts writing about how rich she has become and is in a relationship with Elgin's legendary master swordsman. Though she has only met him once and hasn't even seen his face, she has fallen in love with him and dreams of marrying him. She promises to visit her master and sends her regards. Once she is done writing, she prays to God never to let her meet Lucifer, whom she calls a pervert, ever again in her life. She further prays for him to turn him into a useless tramp, who is left with no choice but to become a ladies' man, and that he continues to lose every gamble and be dogged by misfortune until the end of his life. Meanwhile, just downstairs, Lucifer is performing an exotic dance for the women who are getting hot and sweaty. Just then, he sneezes and wonders why he sneezes every day at this hour. He speculates if someone is cursing him. Alice decides to sit at the bar because she can't sleep with the women screaming. Just then, Henry thuds his milk glass on the wooden counter a little too hard and starts calling those women names. He thinks the women are shameless because they all have husbands, yet they spend their time at the pub. He suddenly grows somber and says because his mom is running this business, people say all kinds of ill things about her. Henry suddenly brightens up and says Alice is much better than those women throwing themselves at the entertainer. He calls her pure and simple and takes an instant liking to her. He suddenly sees Alice's gold badge and his eyes twinkle with admiration. This is his first time meeting a gold-plated adventurer. He asks her to teach him how to use a sword. Alice hesitates to answer him immediately because she knows it is impossible for someone to learn the extreme ice sword arts without proper inheritance. But she eventually agrees and makes Henry promise to drink milk and become healthy before they can start. Henry quickly grabs his glass of milk and gulps it down in one go. He adds that Alice is much more insightful than a useless man who only knows how to use a technique like a quick draw to scam others. Alice wonders who it might be when she hears the women cheering as Lucifer makes it onto the stage. Since Lucifer is wearing a mask, Alice can't recognize him. Henry tells her this is the useless man he is talking about. Henry describes him as a chick magnet, a perfect example of a gigolo. Alice draws out her sword as she remembers the criminal she has been looking for was described as a gigolo from Scotland. She walks up to the stage and confronts Lucifer for being the criminal who is wanted for debt avoidance. Alice asks him to come with her quietly, without any resistance, or else she'll have to use force. Lucifer looks at Alice, but doesn't immediately recognize her because the last time he saw her, she was flat as a washboard, with the girl standing in front of him as Bosamy. To make sure, Lucifer grabs her bosom, only to find paddings inside. His speculation was right, and she indeed is Alice. Alice is startled by the man's audacity and soon loses her temper. She starts mercilessly attacking the man who just touched her inappropriately. Lucifer easily dodges every attack and asks her to calm down before she hurts anybody else, but she wants his blood for what he did. So Lucifer finally stops her as he steps on her sword and reveals his identity to her. He says her temper has got worse than the last time they were together and sexualizes their time together. Alice looks at him in astonishment as he removes his mask and turns ghastly when she realizes who he is. She remembers how he tormented her and lets out a blood-curdling scream that fills the dead of the night. Alice loses her temper when she realizes it is Lucifer. She tries to stab him, but he stops her attack and asks her to calm down. Her emotions overpower her, and she sits on the ground with a thud and starts crying. She blames Lucifer for all the misery she endured the past year after he stole her armor. Lucifer finds himself stared at by judging eyes, and a murmur spreads around. Henry asks what he did to Alice, that she is crying like that. He adds he is disgusted. In between sobs, Alice asks Lucifer to return her important thing to her. Henry adds fuel to the fire by calling Lucifer scum of the earth, and even spits after taking his name. Lucifer is in trouble as he sees the image that he has built getting tarnished. At this rate, he will lose his job. So he does what any man in such a situation would have done: show submission. He hugs Alice and offers to buy her a drink so they can talk it out. After everybody has left, Alice and Lucifer sit at the table drinking. Lucifer calls her unladylike when she is done gulping her drink in one go, and Alice asks him to shut up. She also tells him that she has a boyfriend, also known as Elgin's master swordsman. Lucifer thinks the man must be blind to have fallen in love with such a woman. The owner finds their arguing cute and soon takes her leave. Alice gets straight to the point and asks for her armor back. Lucifer almost spits his drink when he hears the mithril armor's name and tries evading the question. Finding no other way to escape the situation, he comes clean and tells Alice he has sold the armor, and whatever money he got from it, he used in betting, and now he is left with nothing. Alice cannot believe he sold an armor worth tens of millions of gold coins, and he's already spent everything. She loses her cool when Lucifer tries to brush it off and grabs him by the collar. She plans not to leave him till he gets her armor back. Suddenly, Lucifer says he has nothing but his life to offer. He confesses he is no longer a demon king, so they're not enemies, but his stance turns dark, and he says if she insists on taking his life, he'll forget they are not enemies. He holds his sword, ready to unsheath it, scaring Alice out of her wits. But Lucifer sheathes back his sword and says he has no intention of destroying the owner's shop as she has been taking good care of him. Alice gulps down her anger and asks Lucifer to steal it back since he is very strong. But Lucifer refuses, saying they are not like the hypocritical humans. The demons are very particular about fairness, and for them, a contract is a sacred agreement binding the two parties. He questions her integrity as a hero for instigating him to rob. Alice confesses she is no longer a hero because the armor was a loan from the church. After he stole it, she became their debtor. Lucifer shamelessly asks her to work hard, and she'll be able to pay the debt someday. Alice covers her face and cries as she narrates her ordeal of how she had been taking on missions above S rank, each rewarding several 10,000 gold coins, but the risk is also high on these missions, and she doesn't know when she will be fully able to repay the loan. Lucifer's ears point at 10,000 gold coins and asks her for details. Alice tells him that it is common to encounter saint-ranked enemies, but one runs the risk of losing their life. It is a high-risk job with a high reward. She yells because she will still have to complete thousands of these missions to repay her debt, but Lucifer has stopped listening as he has found his next job. Lucifer gets excited about the job of an adventurer as it is precisely what he was looking for, defeating saint-ranked enemies that will extend his lifespan and earn a lot of gold coins from each mission to live a luxurious life. He then turns to Alice and asks about the requirements for becoming an adventurer. Alice replies with an irritated face that anybody with mana or an aura can become an adventurer. Lucifer doesn't possess either, as he's a deviant. He further questions Alice if there is any other way. Alice tells him that a recommendation from an active adventurer will work too. A silly smile appears on Lucifer's face, and rubbing his hands, he asks Alice to be his reference, as he wants to be an adventurer. Alice gives an expression as if she's disgusted, and angrily asks him why she should do it for him. Lucifer asks her not to be petty as they are two people in the same boat, but Alice clearly states that she will not make a referral for a scumbag like him. Lucifer also gets annoyed, and they end up calling each other some very hurtful yet akin to situation names. They soon part ways on bad terms. A few days later, Lucifer is cleaning when the owner asks if he has seen Henry. She hasn't seen him since morning. She notices Lucifer looks a bit down-spirited and asks him if he is doing okay. Lucifer asks her thoughts on being an adventurer. The owner starts narrating the philosophy behind the profession, but then realizes why Lucifer asked the question. She asks him if he is planning to become an adventurer. Lucifer says he wants to, but he doesn't possess the requisites, and Alice isn't helping him either. The owner encourages him to keep trying to persuade Alice. Suddenly, she becomes emotional and grabs Lucifer's hand as if worrying about him. She asks him to refrain from taking those dangerous jobs once he becomes an adventurer, as he might carry a sword, but he is too weak to carry such missions and might even lose his life. Lucifer smiles, a little embarrassed now, and says he is quite strong, contrary to her beliefs. It soon starts pouring and thundering. The owner equips herself with an umbrella to go look for Henry while entrusting Lucifer to look after the shop. Lucifer looks at the sky and wonders how those three silver-plate adventurers from before are doing. Somewhere near the palace, the adventurer who survived the goblin attack makes it to the palace and asks to be let in. He tells the guards that he is injured. Seeing him covered in blood, the guards quickly open the gates and rush to his aid. The adventurer cries and apologizes profoundly, saying he wants to save his fiancée. The guard doesn't understand, but just then, an entire army of goblins appears from behind and charges inside the palace to feast upon the men and kidnap all the women as an offering for their king. The adventurer asks the prime minister to return his fiancée as he did what they asked for. Instead, the goblin betray him and asks him to forget about the woman as she is their king's servant now. With that, he throws a fireball at the adventurer, cheering him instantaneously. The goblins terrorize the palace as the unarmed guards run to save their lives. How will the humans fight against the atrocities of the goblins now that they have attacked the palace? Stay tuned to find out more in the next part of the recap. Don't forget to press the like button if you love the video and subscribe for more content.